A true Renaissance man is how the late George Klein Cummins is described by those who knew him well. George, born July 14, 1903, a sixth-generation Hamiltonian, was the only son of Dr. George Marion Cummins and Mary Elizabeth Klein. Born and raised in the city of Hamilton, George attended Hamilton High School, graduating in 1921. Many aspects of his formative years in his hometown carried on with George throughout his entire life. It was during his teen years that George was befriended by Dr. H. Lee Good, a friend of George's father, who instilled an interest in local history in George. This marked the beginning of what would become George's extensive collection of Indian relics, most collected locally. Pursuing higher education, George went on to attend Dartmouth College, Miami University, and the University of Cincinnati Law School. It was while at Dartmouth that George became a member of Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. After receiving his Juris Doctorate in 1927, George began practicing law, joining the local law firm of his uncle, H. Russell Reigert, Leon Ziliox, and Clinton Egbert. He practiced law for 52 years until his death in 1980. George received recognition for his efforts within the field, notably being honored in 1977 by the Butler County Bar Association for 50 years of practice. On June 27, 1929, he married Alma Bender, another Hamilton native, and in 1979 they celebrated 50 years of marriage. George and Alma were the parents of two daughters, Joan Cummins Crane and Susan Cummins Myers, and grandparents of 7 to whom they were most devoted. In addition to his impressive career and devotion to his family, George made many civic contributions to the region. He served as the president of the Chamber of Commerce, vice chairman of the spectacular sesquicentennial celebration, as well as serving on the Civil Service Commission, the Butler County Park Board, Greenwood Cemetery Board, the YMCA Board, and the Butler County Bar Association. He was also an original participant in Hamilton's Antique Car Parade. Carrying on the tradition to this very day, George's grandson continues to drive George's 1910 Maxwell in the parade.
150 years celebration, sesquicentennial. And who should be general chairman of such an event? Well, George Cummins was in his late 30s that time, and he was a descendant of Israel Ludlow, who was George Washington's surveyor and was the founder of the city of Hamilton. And so George was the natural pick as the chairman. And it was a wonderful celebration. There was a huge parade, and it lasted then for the ceremony, and the celebration lasted for a whole week.
In 1934, with Charles Brennan and Elmer Kessling, George founded the Butler County Historical Society. Together, these men saw a great need for preserving the rich history of Butler County. A sign of their success, the Society's museum continues to play an active role in immortalizing Hamilton and Butler County history. The museum is currently located in the historic Benninghofen House on North 2nd Street in Hamilton and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
He had a large collection even going into the original meeting, and I think he probably would have been one of the key sparks to get this started, because he wanted to see this stuff preserved.
Spending time out of doors was a great love of George's life. Truly a man for others, George made sure to use this love of nature to serve the world around him. In 1933, he dismantled a historic log cabin in Indiana and rebuilt it on his father-in-law's farm. It was a lengthy process that included the construction of a massive stone chimney and a split-rail fence. The cabin served as the scene of countless picnics with family and friends, including the annual Bar Association picnic. When the farm was sold, the cabin was rebuilt at Governor Bebb Park, where it is now part of the early village. Beyond the outdoors, George's hobbies and interests varied widely. He collected stamps, coins, books, Kentucky rifles, Indian artifacts, and antique vehicles. He was also a skilled woodworker. Always an excellent speaker, George was regularly called upon to speak by many civic and school groups to expound upon Hamilton history and Indian lore.
Oh, hoarders just collect stuff. George gathered in with a purpose in specific areas. He didn't get old cereal boxes or anything like that. He had a purpose. And he made a scientific study out of what he had looked at.
A very special time in his life was serving as a scoutmaster of a Boy Scout troop at the Presbyterian Church. His group of boys, some now in their 90s, still talk about the activities he led. Despite all of this, perhaps the way that George will best be remembered is for a column that ran for 30 years in the Hamilton Journal-News entitled Remember When. The feature began in 1951 at the request of his good friend and then editor of the Journal-News, Hosmer Grosvenor. George collected early photographs from the Hamilton area and identified them for publication. A different photo was published every day for 30 years. Some of the pictures are available at the Lane Library, where a special room, the George Cummins Local History Room, has been named in his honor.
It's really quite interesting. Here we have a man who is a local historian who certainly saw the value in preserving this visual history, and years later we are still working with that and providing great information for lots of people.
The 11,000 Remember When photos and the many contributions of his time and talents to Hamilton and Greater Butler County are an outstanding legacy to this true Renaissance man. Tonight we gather to celebrate the many accomplishments of George Cummins. Through his life of hard work and dedication to his community, he more than earned the honor granted to him this evening. Therefore, it's with great pleasure that we welcome George Cummins into the Greater Butler County Business Hall of Fame.